I tell ya. First of all, let me make sure you can hear me. Say yo if you can hear me. I think you can hear me. Wow, that was a whole thing. So OBS has started, and again, this is a completely fresh install and everything. So it's like everything should be fine. Now, OBS has started crashing the first time you hit the go live button, and then when you reload it, it's fine. It's weird. But I think we're good. Okay, good. Thank you. Well, hello. Welcome to the big stream I've been promoting for a month, and now, of course, OBS decides to be... It's weird, the way that the scheduled... First of all, I really like the scheduled stream thing, like the fact that you can get a reminder and it's all there on the front page. I like that a lot. But it generates a new stream key for every time that you do this. So I have to make sure I've got the right stream key plugged into OBS. It's weird. It's inconvenient. There should be a better way to do this. But anyway, hello. So here we are. We got folks already. I've had a bunch of questions sent in, which is fantastic. My intention is to get to everything. I just don't know if we're going to be able to do it all in one stream, but the good part is, since this seems like it might actually be popular, I'll probably end up doing more than one of these a month. My original plan was to do one a month, but I mean, if there's demand, if there's, people want it, I'll definitely do more than one. One a week may be a little much for me, but we'll see. Anyway, hi, how are you? I need coffee. Oh, it's a whole thing. It's been like, the wheels are rusty. I gotta kick the rust off the wheels. Oh. All right, everything looks fine. I'm using a whole bunch of new things, like I'm using Stream Elements instead of Streamlabs for my alerts and stuff, and so it's been hooking that up and a whole thing. Hi, welcome. I got my Puppet Builder's cheat shirt going here. This is from the good folks at Project Puppet. You can get coffee mugs with it as well. Get the bean juice, exactly. I got my No Such Thing as a Fish coffee mug. One of my favorite podcasts. Listen to it often while I'm making puppets. In fact, I listen to it so much while making puppets that it's become weird to listen to it when I'm not making puppets. It's a thing. So, what are we doing today? Since I got a whole bunch of questions sent in, I'm going to, like I said, my intention is to get to everything, but I'm going to prioritize the questions that I can kind of build a practical demonstration around, just because I think that's going to be really useful for a lot of people. Originally, what I had planned, just in case I didn't get any questions, I still planned to do a demonstration, but I was going to do, I talked about this on the little test stream I did, that I was going to show how to make a sausage-style, birch-style nose from scratch. That's still in the works. We may get to that. It might depend, but I had a great question sent in that I really wanted to get to this stream because it's a really good place to start. So I'm gonna switch things up a little bit from what I had planned. We will get to the nose. The nose is gonna happen, don't worry. But I wanna do this first. So if you've got any questions in chat, maybe we'll save that till the end because I wanna start with this demonstration. Now, check this out. Let's see if we got this here. There we go. I know the text is a little small here, but this is the best I can do with the space that I've got. You'll see why in a minute. This is from Old Reindeer Museum on Twitter. I want to thank Old Reindeer Museum because they are the ones who gave me the idea to do these question and answer build streams in the first place. As Captain K knows, I used to stream quite often on Twitch. Just my sort of daily, what I was working on. I would stream 2 or 3 times a week. And that was great, and I really liked it, but it kind of got in the way of my workflow, and so I had to plan around the streams and stuff, and it was just a little too much. And then 2 things happened simultaneously. All of the hate raid stuff started happening on Twitch, and so it just felt kind of gross to be on the platform in general. And then somebody from one of the live streams copied one of my patterns and started selling puppets based off of a stolen pattern that they had copied from my stream. And that felt really awful. And I don't want to get into a whole thing about who it was or anything. It's settled now. But that wasn't great, and that really kind of turned me off of the whole streaming thing. So I just needed some time to kind of sit back and kind of go, I still want to stream, but I got to figure out a way of being able to do it that works for everybody, right? And I think this is a really good format. This is going to help people because they have questions, but it's also like plays to my strengths because I like teaching. I like to help people learn stuff that I already know or have had experience with. So I think this is going to work out. I got a good feeling about this. Yeah, it was really not a good situation. Don't do it. Like, as we're about to see, patterns aren't difficult. Like, they really aren't. Some are complex, and I understand that when you're starting out and when you don't have a lot of patterns, the kind of hunger to get more patterns, but stealing them is not the way. There are lots of ways to get patterns legitimately, or, as we're about to see, to make your own. And that's what we're doing today. So, the question from Old Reindeer Museum. Let's get back on track here. Hello, Ryan. Thank you. Wow, we've got a whole bunch of Twitch people here. That's great. They're getting the band back together. Okay, so the question from Old Reindeer Museum, who is a new builder. I think they're new, actually, but I'm assuming that they may have been building for a while, but they are having some issues. So, I'd like to have more of a lip on puppets, but I can't seem to get it right. Do I need to add a seam allowance for that? The mouth went a bit weird on the last puppet that I made. I ended up looking like it had lipstick on because its mouth fabric went over where the lips would probably be. So yeah, this is a quite common thing. I see this a lot. It used to happen to me. And they also sent, or I got permission to use, this picture of one of their more recent puppets. Hi. And which kind of illustrates the issue. Actually, let's switch to, let's go here. There, that's a better way of doing it. So you can kind of see what they're talking about here. You see how on like the one side there, the fabric has gone over the edge of the lip, and also they want more of a lip. They want there to be that kind of recessed, little edge. I set up a notification for your streaming this live, by the way. Awesome. Again, that's what I like about this whole schedule stream thing. So I think we're gonna stick with this for now. At least we'll see where it goes. But I'm liking how this is going. So anyway, this is an illustration of the issue that they're facing. So the fabric on their lip they want more of a lip, and also the fabric went out of bounds, as it were. And these are related problems. Old Reindeer Museum, you pretty much have the answer already. Yes, you do need to add a seam allowance. And we're gonna see how that works here by, let's hide that. We're going to, as a result, design a puppet head pattern from absolute scratch. And this will kind of illustrate the process, and it will also give a good kind of fundamental breakdown of the structure of the average puppet head pattern. And it will allow you to kind of wrap your head around how these things are put together. I mean, this will be for like 80 to 90% of the puppets you encounter. Some aren't built like this, but most are. And so we will, by the course of doing this, we will address the lip allowance issue, and you'll see how and why, and you'll get kind of the logic of how it all breaks down. So let's just start. Let's just dive right into it. Now this is all going to be freehand. This is the other thing. I know that you can kind of get into the weeds with puppet patterning, and Adam Krutinger demonstrates doing maquetting, where you like make a small clay sculpture and then you flat pattern with tape off of that. And it's great, and it works fantastic. And it's also very complex and time consuming, and you've got to buy materials, and it's a lot. You don't have to do that. You can make patterns from scratch just by drawing them, and the problem, of course, is then you're not sure what you're going to end up with. So you just have to tinker and experiment and iterate. You have to make a thing, look at it, go, well, this isn't quite the right shape. How could I change this? And then iterate off of that. That's how I do most of my patterns. And after you get some experience, you'll kind of get a sense for how a pattern should go. Distances and angles and things. You just need experience doing it. That's all. So the other thing I should talk about, actually, let's have a look at this again. So when you're putting a mouth into a skull, there's two primary ways that it's done. The first way that most people learn, and this is what I learned as well, is there's no proper name for it, but I call it the Kreutinger method, because Adam Kreutinger teaches this on his YouTube channel. And that is, you've got a rigid mouth plate, either plastic or wood or whatever it is, that's put into the skull. In fact, let me grab a puppet skull here. I just happen to have a prototype here. This is from the Newt. This was one of the prototypes of the Newt. So here is like an average puppet skull, and you can see it's foam with, in this case, it's plastic, rigid mouth plate glued into the foam. And then you make the skin, and you create a fabric mouth plate that is slightly smaller than the rigid mouth plate, and then you glue that while it's inside out onto the rigid mouth plate, and then you turn the whole thing. That is the quote-unquote Kreutinger method. That's the method that I use, just because I'm more adept at it than anything else. The other method that people use, and a lot of professionals use this, this is the way that B.J. Geyer, for example, teaches. When you make the mouth plate, you kind of finish it. You put the lining in the mouth plate already, and you can even put like a tongue and uvula or whatever you're going to put in there. Then when you put the skin on, there's no fabric mouth plate. You just put the skin on the right side out, and then you put glue along the edges, and you literally fold and glue as you go the edges of the mouth to form the lip inside. And hello, that's hard. It's very, very tricky. It takes a lot of skill, and it takes a lot of practice to get right. I've done it. Any time that I've done it, it's looked okay, but it's never looked that great. I find that by stitching a small fabric mouth plate in and gluing that and then turning it, I get a much cleaner and more consistent result. But that's just me. I know other builders who hate doing it that way and who can only do the fold and glue method. It's just whatever your brain and your muscles are going to prefer, and that's something you have to experiment with and figure out yourself. I use the Kreutinger method, and I believe that Old Reindeer Museum here has also used the Kreutinger method, and you can kind of see stitching along the mouth, and you wouldn't have that stitching if it wasn't the Kreutinger method, right? So what I'm assuming, Old Reindeer Museum, that you're doing is you are stitching in a fabric mouth plate and then gluing that while it's inside out to the rigid mouth plate and then turning it. So the problem that you're facing is actually that the fabric mouth plate and the rigid mouth plate are the same size. So you're coming right to the edge. Hello, camera. Thank you. Yes, I know it would be nice to look at Kermit, but I'm afraid that I'm the star of the show right now. Is doing that a lot. It's just going over to Kermit, which I think is hilarious. But anyway, so yeah, the problem is that the mouth plate, the fabric mouth plate and the rigid mouth plate are the same size. And you need a slightly smaller fabric mouth plate, and then you need to add that on to the skin pattern. But we're going to demonstrate all that as we make this new pattern from scratch. So what we're going to do is a very, very simple, it's sort of a round head pattern with a round mouth plate, a real standard kind of, basic. Kermit is the real star. It's true. It's true. Maybe I'll get Kermit down in a minute. So we're going to start with the mouth plate because the mouth plate kind of defines the profile of the head. Yes, it's true. It is true. Kermit is the star. So what we're going to do to start with is, I mean, this is a 12 by 12 sheet of cardstock. I always make all my patterns on cardstock because it's nice to trace onto things. So we're just going to mark some center lines to start with. So there's 6 inches right there. And actually, let's do it like this. Yes. And we'll go down 6 inches, which is there. And then we'll trace our line here. Now I'm talking like Kermit. And there we go. So we just got this. Oh, you always want center lines. It's doing it again. I don't know how to make it stop. Hi, hello. You know, Kermit's the star. What can you say? We're just gonna have to ignore that. Or otherwise I'm going to be constantly interrupting. I'm going to have to move Kermit, I think, for the next stream. Okay, so now we've got to decide the kind of diameter of the mouth plate. How wide do we want the mouth plate? As I have preached in the past, smaller is better for puppets, just in general. Only make a big puppet if you have a reason to make a big puppet, like if you do a gift for a theater or something. But for performance and weight, smaller is always better. So we're not going to make it all that big. So the first thing we want to do is decide at the hinge, so at the widest point, how big do we want the mouth plate? And on average, I like about a 4.5 to 5 inch. So we're going to go with 4.5, which means that our, is it radius? Yeah, radius, not circumference, radius, or not diameter. The radius, so from the center to the middle, or to the edge, so to measure, you know, half of the diameter. Yeah, half the diameter. Gosh, math is hard. We're going to go 2.25 inches. All right, so that'll make total 4.5. So we're just going to trace a circle. We're just going to start in the center. We're going to trace a circle. You can see that, right? Yeah, you can see that. I'm going to make the lines a bit darker, but you can more or less see that. Okay. Now I know it doesn't look big, but when you put your fingers on it, that's enough. That's enough room. Is it easier to manipulate smaller puppets? I guess that makes sense. Yep, absolutely. And if you look, you can even see that like with the Muppets and things like that. If you look at the dexterity that you can get out of a Kermit or a Robin even, I mean, who's even smaller than Kermit, and then you look at what they have to do with like Fozzie or, you know, a Cookie Monster or any of the bigger ones, you have to make bigger movements with a bigger puppet, and that takes more muscle energy. And with a smaller puppet, you can just do smaller, more nuanced things. So not only for weight, but for performance, smaller is always better. And there is a tendency when you start building puppets to want to go bigger and bigger and bigger. Resist that temptation. It's one of those things. And one of the things is that BJ Geyer points out is when you see the Muppets in real life, when you actually see the puppets, they're much smaller than you expect them to be. They read much bigger on screen than they actually are in real life. In fact, I had somebody, I think it was Little Blade Kevin on Instagram, when I posted the picture of me with the Oracle, and they were like, I had no idea the Oracle was that small. And yeah, the Oracle barely fits on my hand. The Oracles are really, really small. But they don't look that small on camera. They read much bigger on camera than they actually look. But yes, you have to just do bigger movements with bigger puppets, and that's less nuanced. So you can do a more subtle performance with a smaller puppet. So yeah, good question. Thank you. So here we go. We've got our, what should in theory, if my math is right, yes, that's a 4.5 inch mouth plate. Now, you have a decision to make at this point. You know that most puppets have an overbite. So for example, with this one, right? The lower jaw is recessed in a little bit from the upper jaw. So that's an overbite. You can also have them where they have an underbite, where the lower jaw is further out. Most of the time you're going to find this as a bit of an overbite. Or you can have them even. Kermit is pretty even. Kermit has a little tiny bit of an overbite, but literally millimeters. It's hardly anything. They're almost flush. So that's the decision you have to make at this point. Where's my cut line going to be, right? Here's the center line, but you have to decide where you're going to cut this. Yeah, oh, the good old Museum of the Moving Image. Love it to pieces. And there's also a couple of different ways you can put together a mouth plate. We're kind of getting into the weeds here a little bit. We're going to make this simple. We're only going to make this 2 pieces, just like a flapping Pac-Man style mouth. But there's more ways to do it. You can do a double hinged where you actually have 3 pieces and you have a little piece in the middle that will allow you to kind of go back and forth. I like making those a lot. I do that a lot. Or a variation of that where there is a gap between the upper and lower mouth plates and it's just fabric in there. A lot of live hands monsters are put together like that. We're not going to do that. We're just going to do a basic hinge, like an open and close thing. The nice thing about the double hinged mouth plate is you can get more range and more movement out of it. But this is perfectly fine to start out with. So we're going to do a bit of an overbite, just a little bit, and we're going to do just a single hinge, so a single flappy mouth like that. So let's go down, let's say a 1/4 inch. 1/4 inch is going to be used a lot as we go. So that's about there. And we'll just say, and about there. So this is our cut line, right? Not our center line. So I think what I'll do, just so we keep that in mind, I'm gonna erase this just off the edges so we get a sense. Right, we still want to know where center is, but we also want to know that this is our top mouth plate and this is our bottom mouth plate, okay? So, if we're going to build a skull around this, what we need to do is, now that we know we've got from here to here is half, right? We're going to build the skull pattern in 2 halves. So, from this point to this point, we need to know what this distance is, and we need to know what this distance is to build the lower jaw. We need to know how long to make the lines of the Pac-Man mouth. And that's going to be measuring this curve and then measuring this curve. Measuring curves isn't fun. It can be complex. You can make it simple. There's a bunch of ways you can do it. You can literally just lie a piece of string along here and then mark the 2 pieces of string and then pull it out. I'm sure there's math that you can do. I don't know what it is. What I do have is this. This is a flexible ruler. This comes in real handy for a lot of things, particularly something like this. And I'm sure there's a mathematical relationship between this line and the angle of the curve and all that stuff. It's a lot. I don't know what any of that is. So we are just going to take our flexible ruler, and you don't have to be super precise. You just want to get it as precise as you can. And remember that the materials are soft, they will stretch and they will compress. So if you're off by a little bit, it's okay. So from the center point to the hinge point, we're at 4 inches right there. So we're going to mark this as 4 inches. Get that? And likewise, we're going to measure from the center point to the hinge point on the lower jaw. And that's 3 1/4. So now we know how long to make the lines of the mouth for our skull pattern. So there's our basic, this would be the rigid mouth plate. We'll cut that out in a minute, but we're going to carry on. I got a place to put this. Disorganized. All right, next piece of cardstock. So we don't have to mark center on this. But first thing we have to decide is what we want the angle of the mouth to be. You always want to build a skull with the mouth open, first of all, and the degree to which that mouth is open will determine how much of a cheek bulge you get. And everyone likes the cheeks. Everyone comments on the cheeks. Whenever you make a very simple, round head puppet and you close the mouth and you got the little dimples, everybody loves that. That's great. So you want fairly prominent cheeks. Just a good angle for that is you want it fairly open. I just eyeball this every single time, about that. It's pretty good. And so we know we want this line to be 4, and this line to be 3 1/4, because that's what that is. That's what that is. And we're wrapping the foam around this way and wrapping the foam around that way. So, real simple. We just go out 4 inches on the top. And 3 1/4 on the bottom. Let me make sure that's 3 1/4. Something is pinging in my brain going, that might not be 3 1/4. I may have read that wrong. No, that's 3 1/4. All right, never mind. Shows what you know, brain. So, now that we've got this, and we know that this will wrap around that, and this will wrap around that, so we're good there. The angle is fine. What we now need to kind of think about is the profile of the head. What we want the head to. Hi, camera. Hey, hello, thank you. We need to, you know what, let's try this. Got a plan. We'll just try and take Kermit out of the field of view of the camera. I'm sorry the camera's being all weird. Bugs. There are bugs. Let's try that. See how that goes. We want to decide what the profile of the head's going to be. Now we know that this is the extent of the rigid mouth plate, but we don't have to stop there with the foam skull. We can do anything. You can do, you know, like a big bulbous nose. You can do a recessed jaw. You can do all kinds of different things. We're going to keep it simple. We're just going to do a simple round head. Now, since this is longer than this, and we know that this right here is our axle point. This is our hinge point. So we just want to use that as our center point for the head. Now we can start by just taking that as our center point, taking our compass and going all the way to the end point, and just drawing a big circle based off of that. We're not going to go all the way. I'm just going to go most of the way, and I'll show you why in a minute. And that will give us a perfectly nice round head. Of course, you can do other stuff. You can have this come out and do a big, you know, bulbousy, fraggly kind of nose or something like that. All kinds of stuff you can do. Just experiment. Just see what you think. Most of the time, you'll get something pretty close to what you've drawn, which is nice. A lot of times, if you just kind of mess around with something like this and not really have a plan, you'll be surprised what you come up with. Maybe Kermit should just sit with me. Yeah, it's a good idea. So, the other thing we're going to do is we'll take our compass and we'll do the same thing on the lower jaw. We'll bring it in to our 3 1/4 inch distance. Oh, also, if you're going to do this, get yourself one of these compasses that has like the locking mechanism rather than the spring mechanism, because it stays much more reliably. So we're just going to do that, and see we've got these two lines, and of course they're separated because this is shorter than this. We'll take care of that in a moment. So there's two things we want to do now. Now you can put a dart in this depending on how wide you want the head to be, and the bigger the dart, the wider the head, and the flatter the head. Do you use seamstress's curve rulers, or you usually use the bendy ruler? I don't have a seamstress's curve rulers. I should look into that. I always use the bendy ruler for this. It'll get you there close enough. You'll be out by a couple of millimeters, but it's fine for this kind of thing. Again, foam and fabric, stretch and compress, so you'll fit it on, no problem. But thank you. I should check that. So that we do want a neck hole. That's one important thing, and that I can never get the measurement right. I've seen neck holes that are like way too big, and I've seen neck holes that are way too small. I usually just eyeball it, so I usually just do a curve, It's okay if this is a little big because the fabric isn't going to be like this. The fabric is going to be different. But there we go, right? That's taking care of these lines. Now we know that this is where we cut that, this is where we cut that. I'm going to put a little bit of a dart in the top of the head just because we want it a little bit wide, I think, but not much, just a little tiny dart. And again, that's just something I eyeball. You won't know exactly what this is going to look like until you put it together. Will protruding noses like the newsman's be more difficult compared to rounded noses? Yes. The anything that's got angles, like flat planes on it, you're not going to make that out of just foam. You're probably going to vacuum form a shape and then cover that shape out of plastic, and you're going to cover it in fleece or something, because foam does not do like planar surfaces very well. So yes, the newsman's nose and those kind of noses are probably vacuum formed plastic or like sculpted hard materials of some kind and then covered in fleece. Foam is good for doing curves and soft things, and plastic is good for doing everything else. So yeah, there we go. Now again, you're not going to know exactly what this is going to look like until we put it together, but that's not really the point. That's not what we're getting at. The other thing you can do, this is a bit of a tangent, but very often if you're going to build this out of reticulated foam, like this is reticulated foam, for example, and reticulated foam is fairly stiff and kind of plasticky, you want to draw like a, you should do it with a compass, Kevin. Don't just freehand a circle. If you draw a little kind of Pac-Man shape right at the corner here using the hinge as a center point. And, oops, I did that the wrong way around. There we go. Then what you can do is you can cut this out when you're doing the pattern. This is not essential, but it's helpful. You can cut this out and then you make this little shape out of a softer foam, like upholstery foam or something, and that will help you with opening and closing the jaw, because sometimes these jaws can be a little stiff. This isn't essential, but it's good. Most professional puppets will have this. And also, if you make this Pac-Man shape, if you make the foam insert that you create to go in it slightly bigger than the hole that you've cut out, you can control the size of the cheeks. You can make bigger cheeks. So that's a good tip to know, but we're not going to do that with this. We're not going to worry about that because most beginner patterns won't have this anyway. So we're not going to fuss on that. But there we go. That's it, literally. That's our foam and our rigid mouthplate pattern. So let's cut these out. Let me have some coffee. And then we'll get on with the fabric patterns, because this will demonstrate how the lip thing works. Using my junk scissors to cut cardboard, because never, ever, ever cut cardboard with your fabric shears. I'm going to show a little tip maybe later about how to cut things symmetrically. Usually just fold the thing in half and then cut half of it, but for demonstration purposes, we're not going to worry about that. I'll show that momentarily. Maestro, a little cutting music, please. Okay. Always save the big scrap. This will be something. Okay, and then we're going to cut our foam skull out. And now what we should do, we should label these because I will forget. Now again, I have no idea what this is actually going to look like put together. It'll look fine. It'll look like something. But that's the fun part about it. You can just kind of noodle around and see what you come up with, and you can surprise yourself. And I'm sure you'll be able, with enough creativity, you can make something out of anything. But that's the thing, this will give you a starting point to iterate on, right? Now, that being said, when you are doing this method, I would advise getting some cheap upholstery foam and some cheap polar fleece instead of like the good Nyla fleece or Fuzzell or something. Labeling is important, it's true. Because some of the times this won't work out and you will not like what you get, and you will at least have to iterate on it. And so you don't want to be like, you know, using the good stuff on this. Save the good stuff for when you've got a pattern that you like and it's finished. But here we go. So there is our foam head and rigid mouth plate top, rigid, spelling is hard, mouth plate bottom. And we want to make sure we always have the center line marked. Now, before I cut this in half, before I go along our cut line and make this 2 pieces, we're going to pattern the fabric mouth plate off of this, and this is where the lip thing starts to happen. We're getting through this pretty quick. I think we'll probably get to more questions, and that's good. I'm not going to actually build this. I'll build this for next stream. Like, I'll have it ready to go to see what it looks like. But we're just going to do the pattern, and this will illustrate how the lip thing works. Actually, we can probably use some of this scrap for this. So, like I said, what you want to do is you want to make a fabric mouth plate that, in the case of this, for example, would be, you see how I've got this this purple fabric that's folded over here. This is just to glue onto, but this isn't a bad guide for where you approximately want the lip. Obviously, this isn't very even, but it's not a bad kind of guide. So for example, if I wanted to lip on this, I would bring this in about 1/4 inch. 1/4 inch is a pretty average distance for your lip. So the first thing we're going to do, is we're going to mark our center lines. And we'll do this for real. We're going to fold this in half. This is a little trick for making your center notches on patterns. We're going to cut out just the little corner. And that makes these little notches, and that will help you get center. So with it folded like that, we're going to go again and fold it in quarters. And cut out the little notch on the end. And now we've got notches on all of the center lines. Little tip. So let's just draw us. Now again, we want the fabric mouth plate to be a single piece, and that's why we're doing it like this before we cut this in half. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to mark our center lines with the notches. And then, oops, well done. Just going to trace around. There's we just copied our total rigid mouth plate. So let's bring our center lines in, lining those up. Am I still on camera? Okay, good. Make sure I wasn't getting too far off to the side there. There we go. All right. Again, you could have done this with the compass. It's just, this will line up, that's all. So, to make the fabric mouth plate, we want to decide how big of a lip we want and then make a circle smaller than the total size of this. Now, the easy way, well, one easy way to do that is you can use one of these. This is a seam gauge. It's right now set for a 1/2 inch, but all you do is you kind of mark, I set it for a 1/4 inch. You decide where you want to go, and then you just mark, move it, mark, move it, mark, like that. Of course, the other way, since we know that this is a circle, is you can mark it and then you just gotta cheat. It's not really cheating, you're using a compass. This is mathematically correct. So there we go. There is our fabric mouth plate. We'll cut that out. Remember, we're cutting out the smaller circle. Now, sometimes a 1/4 inch can actually be a bit much. Some puppets have more, some puppets have less. Ernie, for example, and Kermit both have very, very thin lips. Kermit, in some iterations, it does change, but in some iterations, Kermit has no lip at all. Kermit actually does come right to the edge. Other puppets have it bigger. It really depends on the look you're going for. And there's also, like in doing this, you can also do things like a rounded lip where the mouth plate is recessed. That's a bit more advanced topic, but we can get there. So there we go. There's our fabric mouth plate. Now you'll notice that when we put this, we should also mark our center lines, but we'll do that in a minute. We put this on here, you'll see how that will be, let's say this is the puppet's mouth wide open. There's your lip, right? Now, the thing that you got to remember is this is designed to go around like that, right? There's our skull pattern and there's our rigid mouth plate pattern. So this is now too small to go the total distance. And you would have to like bunch this up and to try and sew it in, and that would look terrible. So what we have to do is whatever we've taken off of the total circumference of the rigid mouth plate to make the fabric mouth plate, we have to add that on to the interior of the mouth when we do the fabric pattern for the head. So, again with the piece of cardboard, we're just going to trace this as is. Neck hole and all, we'll take care of that in a second with the dart. All right, so more coffee. It's getting hot in here, although it's like minus 15 degrees right now, so I don't really want to open the window. That's all right. I can put up with it. How are we doing for bit rate and stuff? I think we're okay. So when you make a fabric mouth plate or a fabric pattern, the skin for the head, you always want to make it a little bit bigger. You can use the same pattern. I mean, there's a couple of ways, right? You can drape it, which is great and looks really good, but that's kind of advanced. And it's tricky, and again, that's a whole technique unto itself. I should look at the camera. Or you can use the same pattern for the skull, but you just have to make some small alterations. So generally, you just want to make it slightly bigger than the skull that it's going over. Now again, remember, fleece stretches, foam compresses. You don't have to make it that much bigger, just a little bit bigger. And the other thing is you don't really want to make this line longer or this line longer, because again, you're trying to like keep the lip happening. So what I usually do after I've had my coffee is I'll start from the nose and then I'll just kind of sketch maybe like 1/8 of an inch. And I'll take that down and I'll keep the dart the way it is, because darts have a tendency to want to get smaller and smaller and smaller every time you iterate. So I'll keep the dart the same, and I'll just take this line. I don't know if you can, how clearly you can see that. I'm just sort of extending this line out about 1/8 of an inch. And I'm literally, you can use a seam gauge for this if you like, but I wouldn't worry too much about it as long as you got the line pretty even. Now we're not going to go in the neck hole. Again, it depends on how you're making your neck. If you're making your neck as a separate piece, do go, and you probably want to go out like maybe 1/2 inch and then wrap that around. But we're gonna actually add the neck onto the fleece pattern or the fabric pattern, usually fleece or fur. Again, we're not making this line longer. We want to keep that the same because that's the correct length for our rigid mouth plate. We just want to make the fleece a bit bigger. So when it comes to adding a neck, there's a few approaches we could take. Generally speaking, when you want to make, basically you just want to make a tube. And when you make a fabric tube, you kind of want to make a curve at the bottom. So you'll see a lot of patterns that just basically have like a curve like this at the neck. So that's really kind of all we're gonna do. And this is one of those cases where you just kind of gotta feel it, suss it out, make it, see if you like it. Maybe it's too thin, maybe it's not at the right angle, who knows, but you'll iterate on this. But we're just gonna kind of sketch out a quick neck. Like that. Again, there's a bit of art and science in this. There we go. So now we want to add in to this length the lip that's going to fold over, right? So we know that we went 1/4 inch on the fabric mouth plate, so we got to add that 1/4 inch onto the interior of this. Now what I have learned is because fleece stretches, and it stretches in both directions, it just stretches much more in one direction than the other. You think you need 1/4 inch because you took 1/4 inch off here. You probably don't need 1/4 inch. You probably need less than that because this will stretch. This is one of the problems with trying to fit, in this case, fitting the fabric that's the same size as the rigid mouth plate on, is because the fabric will stretch and move around. And that's what happened. That's why it went over the edge like that. It's real hard to line up perfectly. So that's why that happened. So what you want to do is, you want to go 1/4 inch, but you probably want to go less than that. And I don't really have a precise measurement. Just make a lip, but make a little lip. Make a smaller lip than you made for the fabric. And when you get to the end, we're just going to extend this line out. So get rid of the ones we're not using. You just want to take the edge, just like with the dart, and you want to just extend that line. You want to keep going in the same trajectory as that line. So we're just adding a little bit of the lip. All right, I think that's clear. So you can kind of see we've just made a slightly larger version of the pattern, with the exception of the dart, and we haven't made this line or this line longer. And that's really it. That's the whole thing. So what you do when you put this together is you take your fabric mouth plate. This should more or less fit in here, and you stitch that in to this, and then when you put the foam skull together, you do it exactly the same way you've been doing it. Just glue it in inside out and then turn it, and that's it. Now I hope that was clear. Do let me know if it wasn't, or if you have any further questions. But like I said, I'll cut all this out. I'll make one of these and we'll have it ready to show for the next stream. But that is that. Now, there's a bit more in terms of technique to this, and I think we'll go back to the conversation cam here. Let's take that away. So, another one of the issues, Old Reindeer Museum, that you're having is when you're gluing the fabric to this camera, when you're gluing the fabric to the skull, it's kind of shifting and sliding around a little bit. That's going to happen. That's just the nature of the beast, unfortunately. Yeah, you know what? We should probably just go ahead and make a whole puppet out of this. That'd be fun. Yeah, it really is just like once you understand the structure of how it breaks down, you can kind of just mentally picture it, but you do have to get used to it, and it really is just a matter of practice. So when you're gluing in your fabric, it's not lining up exactly with the interior of your rigid mouth plate. The couple of things you can do to help with that is always, always, always mark your center lines. You see how I've got center lines here? Always. You always want to use those as guides to where you're going to put things. The other thing to remember is, though, once you've got a thing built, very often things will shift and move around because this is soft material. Things stretch, things compress, and so sometimes where you marked the center line isn't the actual center of the object anymore, and you have to keep that in mind as well. You just have to kind of look at it and kind of go, okay, well, this is the center now. It is a matter of eyeballing it and making a more or less educated guess. But you can give yourself guides and helpers, like always marking your center lines. The other thing that using the Krutinger method of putting a mouth plate in, all methods have strengths and weaknesses, and one of the weaknesses of the Krutinger method is that, of course, fabric has a tendency to want to wrinkle and you know, scrunch up and stuff, particularly when there's glue on it. There isn't really a good way around that other than just practice. One thing I used to do, I can actually have one of these. I don't do this anymore because I've got a bit better at it from practice. But I used to make stuff like this. This was for a greebly. This is a little just piece of 1/2-inch foam that is the same size as the totality of the mouth plate. And then I would like shove this inside the fabric and kind of use this as a cushion to flatten like a pillow, to stuff it basically. So instead of gluing like a wrinkly bit of fabric to a flat surface, I'd be gluing a flat surface to a flat surface. This helped quite a bit. I find I don't need to use this quite as much anymore. Again, just from experience. But one thing you got to remember, when you're gluing anything with contact cement, and I assume that you're using contact cement. I hope you're not using hot glue to put in a mouth plate. If you are, I mean, I know some people have to, like some people can't work, they don't have the facilities or the ventilation to work with contact cement, and that's totally understandable. If you're using hot glue, you really only have one shot. That's it. If you get it wrong, it's wrong, and there's nothing you can do about it, other than just rip it out and replace it and try again. If you're working with contact cement, though, it's not set in stone. You've got working time, and B, you can pull it out. So, oh gosh, I wish I could demonstrate this. I don't really have anything I want to tear apart to demonstrate. But when you glue something with contact cement, the proper way of doing it is to put contact cement on both surfaces that you want to join, let it dry to just get tacky, and then put them together, and when you've got them seated in the right position, you can pinch them together.
Could you say that again?
Good
My
heavens.
apologies.
Siri thought I was talking. I have you on Do Not Disturb for a reason, Siri. Stop it. Stop it. Good heavens. It's not stopping. That scared the life out of me. Anyway. What? Purple Cheesecake Zebra. Hello. Hello, Scarlett. How you doing? Nice to see you. Everyone, not everyone, but a lot of people from Twitch have come over. That's great. I've totally lost track of what I was saying. Contact cement. When you are gluing with contact cement, put it on both surfaces. Let it dry till it's tacky. Lightly stick it together. At that stage, before you really apply pressure, you can pull it apart and reseat it. That's the first thing to know. And once you've got it, I don't work glue often, I can see trying out super glue too. Would that work? Oh, yeah, no, super glue would be real bad, actually. Yes, it would harden the fabric. Like cyanoacrylide, that's what anyway, it's yeah, no, super glue would be real bad. You don't want that. It actually turns into a kind of polymer, like a crunchy plastic. It's actually quite brittle. And like, yeah, no, you would get, I mean, what you would have to do is coat the entire surface and then be really fast with how you do this. So yeah, I would not recommend super glue for this. You want working time. That's one of the, there's several reasons why we all use contact cement, and one of them is with contact cement you have working time. So if something is misaligned, you have an opportunity to pull it apart and then reseat it where it should be. And one of the things that I've learned, that this part, putting in the fabric mouth plate and turning ahead, used to be like the single most stressful part of making a puppet. And I think a lot of people find that. It's because this is the point, you've already done a whole bunch of work, and this is the point at which it can go really wrong. The important thing to remember when you're working with contact cement is you're never in a position, or very rarely are you in a position where it's just done. You're just stuck. You can't do anything. Almost always, you can take a hairdryer, even if it's a done, set piece. You can take a hairdryer, gently heat up the surface, and you will be able to reactivate that glue. That glue will then come loose, and you'll be able to gently pull apart anything that's put together with contact cement. And that's one of the reasons why we use it, is because very often puppets need repairs. And if you cannot open up a puppet, then you're not going to be able to repair it. So, one of the most important things to remember when you're putting in a mouth plate with contact cement is that you're not one and done. You have more than one shot at this. At least half of the time that I'm building up any puppet, and I go to put the fabric skin to the mouth plate, it goes wrong. It goes off center, it goes misaligned, the lip isn't even, something goes wrong. And I just take the hairdryer, warm it up, gently pull it apart, reseat it until I get it right. You do have to reapply the glue, but the thing is, that's super important to remember, because I find that my state of mind really affects how well I'm going to do. So if I'm tense and thinking, oh God, this is going to go wrong, it'll go wrong. But if I know that, no, it's okay. If things mess up, it's fine. It's just foam, relax. There's a puppet builder on YouTube who does a show called It's Just Foam, Relax, which is a great title. It is true. It is just foam. It's fine, relax, you're good. You don't have to worry about messing it up. You can fix it. Almost everything can be fixed. So that's really important, I find. It's just like the state of mind that you put yourself in. It'll be okay. You got another chance. And that's super important to remember. So next time you're building a puppet and you put the mouth plate, the fabric glue to the rigid mouth plate, and it's misaligned, take a deep breath, get your hairdryer out, gently warm it up. You don't want to blast it with heat, obviously, because you're going to melt stuff if you do that. But gently warm it up, gently pull it apart, warm it up, pull it apart, warm it up, pull it apart until it comes off. Let it sit, reapply the glue, try again. The other thing that you can do to make sure that you're getting stuff aligned properly is and Adam Krutner talks about this, is do what's called a wet fit, where most of the time when you're doing contact cement, you want to put it on and then let it dry to the point of being tacky. If you don't let it dry quite that far, you always want to let it dry a little bit. You never want it to be completely wet when you put the two halves together. But if you let it still have a little bit of pliability, a little bit of moisture in there, it's much easier to pull apart, and it will still set, it will still glue properly. But you just give yourself a little bit more working time. It's easier to pull apart. It's easier to then reseat things. It's easier to get wrinkles cleaned out. Because sometimes when you put it on and the fabric wrinkles, you can what I usually do is I put the fabric on like a inverted puppet on my hand, and then I'll press them together, and then I'll just smooth it out with my fingers on the inside, and it usually works out pretty well as long as the glue isn't too dry. So I hope that helps, Old Reindeer Museum. Let me know if it doesn't, or if you've got more questions. I have 10 messages. That's weird. I'll figure out what that is later. Anyway, so that's the first question answered. Where are we at? We got a whole hour left. Okay, we could do more questions, so hang on. If anybody in the chat has a question, let me know. Otherwise, I'll get to another question that's been sent in. And drink more coffee. Oh, excuse me, my nose is running. Oh, my. So let's get this away. Just out of the way. And I will prep the next question. Maybe we will get to the nose. Maybe we can do the nose today. Would y'all like to see a nose? It's a very similar process to what we just did. As a matter of fact, if we do the nose, we could use some of this scrap. I'm going to stick this back here. Excuse my back. Hermit, I'm telling you. Oh, awesome. Primary school teacher. I have 3 or 4 regular clients who are teachers, of course. It's great. I absolutely love it. We love a nose. Hello, Chady. Okay, we'll do the nose. Fine. You know what? Actually, let me see. If I have another viewer question that I can get to before. The nose actually shouldn't take long. And the nose, we will actually build something. But let me just check another question that got sent in. Let me see if we can pick something here. Actually, this is good, and it's a quick answer. Team Smartass from Instagram asks, give me a sec here. I'm editing live. This is really exciting. Let's see, is this gonna work? Yes, it is. Okay, what's the most difficult technique you've had to master in puppet building? Exactly what we just talked about. Putting a fabric, like a rigid mouth plate and a fabric skin together. All the stuff we've been talking about, this is literally the hardest thing that I've had to do. And in fact, the thing that's harder to do is the folding glue method that we talked about earlier. I still haven't mastered that. That is something I am still working on getting used to. So there you go. There's the answer to that question. Noses. Let's do noses. Everyone loves a good nose. So what we're gonna do, let me put this away. Oh, I gotta blow my nose. Excuse me. I'll mute the mic, of course. 1 second. Oh, okay. What we are going to do, let's go to the top-down cam. This is the goal. We're going to end up with something like this. It's not going to be exactly like this, but this is like your standard sausagey, slightly burnt style. And again, you don't have to use this as a nose. This can be horns, this can be spines, this could be anything. It's just shape. But this is what we're going to end up with. Now, in terms of puppet noses, I kind of got into the weeds on this because for the longest time I wanted to make noses that were like this, but they seemed like the actual shape is fairly complex. I mean, when you look at it, you think, okay, well, it's kind of 2 spheres that's connected by a thing. There's probably a bunch of darts in there because it's a nice smooth curved surface. It's like, how do you do this without, like, do I have to vacuum form something? Do I have to sculpt something and then vacuum form it? How do I do that? No, this is way easier than that, and I will show you how. And this is literally just something I stumbled across. I just made this. I saw a shape where like this, that you could see the seams. I don't even remember what it was now. It may have actually been somebody else's puppet. Smith Henderson, quite possibly, if you're watching. Thank you, because I looked at one of the noses on your puppets. That's exactly what it was. I remember now. And went, hang on, that's only 2 pieces. Huh? Okay. So I just started tinkering and playing around and figuring out how to do it. And it's way easier than you might think. And I was really pleased because it means I can make shapes like this now. And these are really, really fun Muppety style things. So all this really is 2 pieces that are mirrored. And you kind of can just draw it and put it together, and it is what you draw. It's a bit weird. Let me demonstrate. So we're not going to end up with exactly this, but we'll come close. We'll end up with a sausagey kind of shape. What I use, one of these, a circle template. Now, whatever you draw, remember, you're going to put this together in 2 halves, so it's going to curl in on itself, and it will be much narrower and much thinner than what you draw. That's the thing you have to remember. So whatever you're drawing, make it much fatter than what you want to end up with. So really, it's just 2 circles connected by a line, or 2 lines. So let's start with a circle like this. And the nice thing about these circle templates is it has the kind of crosshairs where you can mark the center. And so let's always, always, always put your center lines in. And we're going to take this center line, we're going to extend it quite a long way out so we can, you know, actually this line here, that's not bad. That's a pretty good length. So let's do that. Again, you can just decide how long you want it to be. And this line, this measurement won't change. So you can kind of go, oh, okay, well, I want my nose to be 5 inches. Sure, 5 inches is about there. So that's good. Now, what the diameter of the other circle, if you make it a Muppety sausage on a bun, exactly. If you make it the same size as this circle, then you'll end up with a very Bert-like nose. Bert's nose is pretty symmetrical, right? The top is about the same diameter as the bottom. If you make a slightly smaller circle, you'll end up with a shape much more like this, where it tapers. So let's pick a slightly smaller circle. Which size is this? That was a 1 3/4. So we'll go down 1 3/8, let's say. So we're just going to line this up along that center line. And remember, we're making this slightly chunkier and fatter than we know we're going to end up with. So there we go. Now we've got 2 circles, you know, approximately 5 inches apart. And so now all we're going to do is we're going to connect this point and this point with a line. I will make this out of foam. I don't know. We'll also make the pattern for the fleece covering, but I don't know that we're going to have time to make the fleece covering, but we'll see. And likewise on the bottom. So there we go. We just have this shape. We're just going to cut that out. This is kind of a big nose. Well, it looks big here. It probably won't look as big when we build it. Like I said, you're always going to have something smaller and narrower than you start out with. You know what this means? We're going to have to open the window and get the respirator out because we're going to be working with contact cement in a couple of minutes here. It's going to be freezing in here. Well, I guess it'll solve my it's too hot in here problem. All right, so there we go. There's just our weird little shape. And all we're going to do, I guess, actually, maybe we'll make the fabric pattern first, because that'll be instructive, and then you can just go ahead and put it together, even if I don't have time to. So let's see, we're going to go to the other side. Is this going to be wide enough? We'll see. So to make the fleece covering is very similar to that head pattern in that you just want to make it slightly bigger than the foam pattern. Now, one of the goals, of course, is to make as few seams as possible. Yeah, exactly. Again, you can put it that way, right? And there you go. Oh, another thing I do, I don't know if I can get the puppet down without knocking a bunch of stuff over, but instead of closing off the narrow end, what I've done is I've put a dull joint in there. I've just glued a dull joint in there, and that's how I attach it. So instead of attaching it to a face, yeah, let's get a little small prototype here. Instead of attaching it like this, attach it like this. And that looks real good. That's what I did with the Krampus puppets over Christmas. I still have one up here. I could demonstrate it, but I think I'm going to knock stuff over if I try and pull it out. So I think we'll avoid disaster on a live stream. But to make the fleece, you want to eliminate as many seams as possible. So remembering that fleece stretches, one way we can do that is to just mirror this pattern. So we're going to take this, we're going to trace it poorly. That's all right. This is just for demonstration purposes. And then what we're going to do is we're going to flip it over and we're going to kind of line it up, overlap it a little bit, and then trace it there. So this is our fleece pattern. You want to cut this out slightly larger than the thing you've traced. Yes, exactly. You can wiggle it around. You could even, yeah, you can even just push your finger and it will wiggle. I didn't even try that. Maybe I should get the Krampus puppet down. That would be good. I'm not sure if that would work. Give me a second. Anyway, so this is literally it. This is our fleece pattern. Let's cut it out. I was so happy to stumble across this. And when you think about like just different diameters, circles, and different lengths that you could, there's all kinds of things you could do with this very, very simple thing. So I am cutting it out slightly larger than it's drawn. Again, just to compensate for the fact that we want the fleece to go around it, not compress it too much. And again, it's like it's not even a 16th of an inch. It's just a little tiny bit. And there we go. That's literally it. That's all our total patterns for this. So let's put together the foam part. What's our time like? Yeah, we're good. See what I've got under here for scrap foam. Again, this is another great use for scrap foams. Here we go. We got some scrap foam here. Yeah, I know, right? Like, because I've seen patterns for, making. Adam Krutinger has a really great free pattern on his website for making noses. I've got it over there somewhere, and it's relatively, it's a bit involved. There's like two darts, and it looks great when you put it together, and it's a very different shape than this. And yeah, I would encourage you to use it. I use it all the time myself, but this just blew my mind when I put this together and I ended up with this. And it's like, this is really good and it's really even and it's like totally usable. So here we go. We haven't labeled. We don't really have to label this, but we'll just go foam nose. We'll put this one just to make sure that I remember. And fabric nose one. So we want two of these. So we're just going to trace out two. Now, is this the good foam or the bad foam? Well, this is the not bad foam. Okay. I have some very bad foam. In fact, here it is. This blue stuff, I hate this. This is the worst foam I've ever worked with. They sent me the wrong foam by accident. This is the kind of foam that you end up getting at like a Joann's or a Michael's or something like that. This is terrible. Like a razor blade will not cut this stuff. It's too rubbery. It's too resistant. Hate it. As a matter of fact, I hate it so much I'm going to use it because I want to use it up. I don't want to waste it. But you cannot cut this stuff with a razor blade. We're actually going to cut this with scissors, which is not good and I hate. But anyway, we're just going to trace this out. twice. These we do want 2 separate pieces. We don't want to eliminate the seam here. And I'm going to get my foam carving scissors. Yes, they are different than the cardboard cutting scissors. And again, like I said, we can try. I can even show you. Let's show you. This is this is a good illustration why you don't buy the crappy blue or green fabric from a craft store. Let me show you. The way you carve foam should be with the razor blade. This is a relatively new blade. You see how it's resisting, it's pulling, it's not making a clean cut. I could not cut this with any degree of precision. It's just too rubbery. It's like, it's literally, look at that, it's resisting the blade. Yeah, exactly. This cheap craft foam stuff is just, it's too rubbery. There's literally too much rubber in the foam. Whereas something like, I don't know if I have any scraps of reticulated. Here we go. This is reticulated foam. This stuff, no resistance at all. No, just right through it. Like, it's beautiful. This stuff is what you want to use if you're making like a professional quality puppet. However, so, you can carve this with a razor blade, but not with any degree of precision. Yes, exactly. So that's what I'm going to do. I got to use shears to get through this. Now, the problem with using shears to cut foam is when you cut foam, you really want a nice straight 90-degree angle to your cut. And that's really hard to do with scissors that are like, wobbling around. That's why it's much easier to do with a razor blade that you can lay down and then cut sharply. So we're just going to try our best to make clean, sharp-edged cuts. It's not going to work, I guarantee it. Never does. And this is a case, unfortunately, where precision does matter. But we'll just do what we can. Since this is a demonstration, though, I'm not going to worry too much about it. Yes, there you go, Reindeer Perla. That's exactly it. I've got a whole thing. If you want to know the foam lecture, there's a video of a live stream archive about building puppets with accessible materials. It's on this YouTube channel. It's on one of the playlists. I would encourage you to go and watch that to find out the differences between different foams and why we use some foams over others. Now, most of the time, when I'm making something for the shop that isn't specifically for a commissioned client, I'll use upholstery foam. But I won't use this blue stuff. I'll use, there's a white upholstery foam as well. And it cuts with a razor blade much better. It's still a bit too rubbery for my liking, but it's much better than this stuff. I mean, this stuff is literally designed to be used for like cushions, and it's called upholstery foam for a reason, because it's used in upholstery. Now, because we had to cut this with scissors, a word of warning, this is not going to come out as cleanly and as smoothly and as perfectly as this one did, for example, because this was able to be cut out with a razor blade, because this is the nice foam and this is not nice foam. But we'll just see what happens. So the next thing we want to do is glue this together. Now we come to a really... I get my reticulated foam from foamzone.ca. It's the only place I've found in Canada, literally, to buy it. And the problem is they're not reliable. They're really like flaky, and their website doesn't work half the time. And I've had to like email them to try and get them to send me some and invoice me through PayPal, and it's weird and it's not nice. You can, if you are not, if you were in the States, for example, you can order it through Puppet Pelts, puppetpelts.com. They are great. They're a little pricey, but reticulated foam in general is a little pricey. That's one of the reasons why I save it for like the special projects. And I use upholstery foam mostly for shop stuff. It is tricky to get and not cheap. So we're gonna get the barge out, and when we get the barge out, we do two things. We get the respirator, and we can put gloves on. I take my rings off to put the gloves on. Now, the problem with wearing a respirator on a stream, as you can guess, is in theory, it becomes difficult to hear me. So here's my plan. I've tested this locally. I haven't tested this live, obviously, so we'll see if this works out. This is another mic pack. I'm going to switch mics. I'm going to take this mic and I'm literally going to strap it to the outside of the mask. And hopefully it'll still sound muffled, but hopefully you'll still be able to hear me and understand me rather than me having to shout through the mask. So we'll see. But let me get the window open first. And I'm going to put the fan in the window. You can kind of see me up in the picture-in-picture there. Oh, that's brisk. There we go. So I've got the fan going. The fan is venting out. It's not blowing the cold air in. And let me get the gloves. So I'm going to switch over them. I'm going to put the mic on the mask and I'm going to switch the mics over. I'm going to mute the mic while I do that, just because you don't want to hear a bunch of banging around and nonsense. So give me 1 second. One, two, 1, 2. Okay, you should be able to hear me. Say something in chat if you can hear me. This is weird. This is very weird. I got a mic strapped to my face. I think it's working. I can see the meter moving. So again, it's still going to be muffled, but at least I don't have to like yell. Oh, we have fun here. Okay. Yay. You can hear me. All right. Important. Safety is important. I've got my gloves on inside out. Um, yeah, I used to be a lot more casual about the mask. And then I got some health problems. And I'm less casual now. But that's a whole other story. Okay, here we go. We are gloved up. We are masked up. We are going to release the barge. And we're going to glue this whole deal together. Yes, I am using a brush on barge. I know to some people that is a cardinal sin. It really depends on your priorities, doesn't it? I experimented with like getting a mic inside the respirator, like Darth Vader or something, but
There's a whole thing that cosplayers do to get, like, when you're a stormtrooper or Vader or Fett or something, and you've got the voice system. That's a whole other thing. All right, so we are putting our contact cement, in this case, good old barge. This is gonna get real rough. I can already see. This is a theoretical nose. This is not a completely practical nose. Throwing a new foam myself. Here it's called scrim foam, half-inch foam with cloth backing on one side. That's interesting. Scrim foam, you say? I shall look into that. It strikes me that as puppet builders, like, we're gonna have to find an alternative to foam. Foam is a petroleum product. And, like, we gotta stop using that stuff, and we're not going to be able to make it forever. So, and there really isn't any other materials out there that you can replace foam with. Okay, so I'm gonna get the hair dryer, and we're just gonna dry this off real quick. Better to let this stuff air dry, but we're on stream, so we're not gonna sit here for 10 minutes while this dries. All right, so here we go with the hair dryer. Yeah, I'm curious how that will go, Travis. Okay, so I can see the fabric backing being nice because that means, like, you've kind of got lining in there already, right? I can understand the appeal. All right, I'll close this up. Now, this is the only place we're going to use the barge, so in another few seconds, I'm going to, lose the mask and everything. But for the moment, let's make sure we're doing this the right way. So the way you always want to glue your foam together is you want to make sure that the pen marks are on the inside, because fleece is always a bit sheer, and in some colors you can see through if the pen marks are on the outside. So, little tip. Now, what I should have done that I didn't do is make some registration marks so I can line this up perfectly. I didn't do that, of course. So we're just gonna, you know what? Let's go tip to tip first. Do it this way. There we go. And then we're literally just going to go around, and this is what I'm talking about, how you've got working time, right? Like, I just pulled it apart and reseed it because it wasn't sitting exactly as I liked it. There we go. Now, this isn't stuck together until I give it a good pinch. That's what contact cement, that's how it works. So you can kind of just get it seated and go, okay, that's good. Then go through and give it some pressure, and that will kind of lock the glue in place. So a lot of professionals, when they use contact cement, particularly barge, instead of brushing it, because brushing, it kind of glops up a little bit, and you get like pools of it. They'll stipple it. They'll use another piece of foam, and they'll kind of pat it with the piece of foam and do a stipple technique, and that gets a more even coating. I've never had great luck with stippling. I don't know why. Most professionals do it that way, so I would advise giving it a shot at least. It just doesn't seem to work out for me. So the tricky part here is just going around the curve. But you can just kind of push it together. But we're literally just sticking the edges together. So once you've got a little boat shape like that, you push it together like that, and then take your finger and push down and kind of bring the edges together. Got some feathers in there. You didn't ask for feathers in your nose, did you? Ooh, this is actually not coming out too bad. But this is just it. You just want to push the edges together. And okay, this again, another reason why this foam is terrible is it doesn't like the glue. It really wants to push the glue away. But there we go. Very similar to what we reached the canoe stage of puppet nose making. Yep, that's where we are. But there we go. There's our basic foam nose shape. Again, it's a little rough because the cuts were a little rough. If you can do a much cleaner cut, this will be much more even. However, there's a couple of things. I'm gonna switch the mic around, take the mask off now. Give me a sec.
Check 1 2 1 2 1 2. There we go. Yeah. So here we go. There's our little schnoz. Now, one thing that will help this kind of retain a more even shape, and this is something that Adam Krutinger does with his nose pattern that you can go and download. He stuffs it with fiberfill, teddy bear stuffing, and that's what I do as well. It gives some pressure on the inside that pushes outwards, and it kind of helps this keep a more rigid form. This is full of fiberfill. Yeah, well, yes, exactly. A little irregularity is good. In this case, I would like it to be rounder, but again, when you put the fleece on it, that will probably also even out or smooth out some of those irregularities. Um, so I think that's probably where we're going to leave it. Should you use thicker foam when you make larger noses, or will thinner foam be okay? Thinner foam will be okay if you stuff it. Let's demonstrate that. Actually, I wasn't gonna, but let's do it. So, you could, in theory, leave where you're gluing this together. You could leave a little bit of this open and then push the stuffing in through that hole. That's a bit fiddly and tricky. I find it's better, and Adam Krutinger does this as well, to once you've got it together, just make a new hole, just cut a new slit and then stuff it, and then close that hole up. I'm not sure why it works better. It just works better. So what we're going to do is we're going to take an X-Acto knife carefully. Just my glasses. And I'm going to cut a little slit. I'm going to cut it. We're going to say that this is the back, this is the front. So I'm going to cut it in the back just in case it doesn't close up as cleanly as we would like. And I'm going to cut a little hole. So this is all 1/2 inch foam. I should have pointed that out. Thank you for reminding me. This is all 1/2 inch. That's what I use the most of. So there we go. We've got a little hole in the back. And we're going to stuff it quite tight. We're gonna make it a little bit overstuffed. Rhinoplasty, exactly. So this is the stuff. This is fiberfill. This is just teddy bear stuffing. You get this at craft stores or Amazon or wherever. You always get more than you think you're going to need. And we're literally just going to stuff it on down in there. We're just going to like shove it all up in there. And you're not going to see a lot of difference right now, but this will help it hold its shape and will kind of, again, this applies some internal pressure and pushes outwards and helps it kind of, retain the pattern shape. I'm glad we got to this. This is what I had planned to do. But when Old Reindeer Museum's question came in, I thought, oh, that's a really great place to start. So I'm glad we got to do this too. There will be more. I've got plans for Travis. One of the things that you might be interested in is one of the future streams we're going to do ears for the goblins, different ear shapes. So I'm getting a little too stuffed here. I'm getting it hard to get it all in there. So that's the stage you want to get to. You want to get to the stage where you cannot push any more in. So that's good. Now we're going to close it up. So I got to get the mask back on, unfortunately. Give me a second. We got to do it right. No, I put my gloves in the garbage already. Hang on. I don't want to use too many gloves because that's literally taking PPE away from healthcare professionals. Turn them inside out. Hang on. I know I didn't get any glue on this, so it's okay to put to my mouth. Just FYI, don't put glue in your mouth. Okay. Put the gloves on first. I really, really try and conserve gloves as much as possible because doctors and nurses need these things way more than I do. So, okay, let me switch over to the mask. 1 second.
One, two, 1, 2. Check 1, 2. Okay, good. We're good. So now we're just going to close up this hole. My glasses are weird and I can't see properly. There we go. The mic is literally in the way of my vision. I gotta fix that for next stream. All right. So we're just gonna put some glue on the incision. I put too much glue on the incision, of course, because I can't see properly. We're gonna dry it. I should point out when I'm drying glue with a hairdryer, I have a little switch here that turns the heating element off. You don't want to heat this up. You want this to be like cold air or neutral air. All right. I think there's too much glue, but let's see if we can get this closed. Yeah, we're okay. Not terrible. It wants to pull apart a little bit, but for purposes of demonstration, it'll be all right. There we go. Little incision closed. Yeah, that's the NVIDIA filters are pretty darn good. So there we go. There is our nose, or at least the foam part of our nose. Now to do the fabric, I think we have enough time. Yeah, we got enough time. I will be getting the glue out again if we get this far, so let me carefully take these off so I can use them again. Go. I should have just left the gloves on because I can do everything with the gloves. So. Oh well, too late now. Gonna switch over the mic.
One, two, 1, 2. Okay, good. I got the mic pack sitting on the table here. That probably is a bad idea. What I'm going to do is I'm going to cut out the fabric and I'm going to show you how I stitch it. I'm not going to stitch the whole thing because that takes a little while, but it is a ladder stitch. I need some scrap fabric. Here we go. We're going to make an orange nose. So you want the stretch to go across. You don't want it to go up and down. You want it to go across. So that would be this way. So we'll take our fabric pattern and just trace it out. Also, Old Reindeer Museum. I know if you're watching the playback, I think you said you were going to watch the playback. I know there's more to your question. We will get to that in a bit. Thank you also for sending in the questions. So what we'll do is we'll trace this, FYI, the marker that I'm using to trace this with. You'll notice it's not a Sharpie. This is an air dry vanishing ink marker. These ink marks will fade in about 48 hours. Because sometimes when you're doing stuff like this, you're picking seams or something, the pen marks will actually kind of pop out with the fibers. And you don't want that. So this ink will disappear. And you can get those at like fabric stores and stuff like that, craft stores. So we'll cut this out. So because we mirrored the pattern, we've got a nice, smooth, flat surface. And that will be what we want to have on the outside to show. We want to hide as many seams as possible. Thank you, Ad. Much appreciated. You had a bunch of people. This is good. I'm feeling good about this. We should do it more often. I'm not saying once a week. That might be a bit much, but possibly every 2 weeks. Okay. There we go. So to cover this, quick question, which may not be answerable on stream. When performing rod arm puppets, how does one manipulate each rod individually? That is an excellent question. And it is very difficult. And there are some techniques. I've never been very good at it, to be perfectly honest. I kind of do it as if you were holding chopsticks upside down. You know what? We'll get to that in a second. Let me just finish this because we're right at the end of this, and then I'll grab a puppet and I'll actually demonstrate. So what I do to cover one of these noses is I'll take the pattern and I'll line it up and I will glue this down just along this strip here. So it's just like this. It's like a hot dog. Oh, that is you. Okay, good. Have you been here the whole time? Because we did a whole thing at first. Anyway, you'll see. So yes, there is more to your question, and we will get to that just in future streams because we'll kind of wrap it up here. So glue this just like a hot dog, just down the center line here. And this center line is going to be the top, right? This is going to be like the part that you show. And then when you close this up, you just ladder stitch this all the way along. And having it glued in like this just helps it keep in place. You don't have to glue it, but it helps. Yes, exactly. It is on a bun. In fact, it's even the right color. Look at that. So that's how I do it. And then I just ladder stitch this closed, which we don't have time to do on stream, but that's how you do it. That's the nose. Okay, dual arm rods. Let's go. Let me put the glue away here. Good question. So there is a technique that I think you can find some videos of this on YouTube. I've never found one that's reliable. I know that Brian Zimmerman actually has a video on this. And there's a technique you can use that like you cross them and then you curl a finger. I've never been able to do it. Like it's not easy or intuitive, but it is a very common technique. I know Phil Fletcher uses this as a technique. And the other thing is, if you can't do it, really is just practice. And if you have a hard time with it and you can't do it, that's okay. You can figure out ways around it. You don't always have to have both arms going. One of the best puppeteers that ever lived, Richard Hunt, was not good at using dual arm rods. In fact, most of his characters only used one arm rod. He did Scooter originally. And if you watch The Muppet Show, you look at Scooter, Scooter's always just got one arm going. Yes, for live hands puppets, if you want both arms going, you need two performers. There's a famous image of like Richard Hunt and Jim Henson and Frank Oz doing Ernie and Bert, and of course it's Jim Henson and Richard Hunt doing Ernie because Richard Hunt's got one arm going. So yes, for live hands you do need two people, or you just need to be manipulating one arm. Now, let's take a famous example. Any excuse to get my Kermit out. What I do, because I'm not good at it. Hello, I'm here. Is this arms? Okay. So when I'm holding them, I'm just kind of holding them like this. I'm just nothing fancy. And this is it's a bit awkward. But if I need to do something with one arm, very often you can just drop and then do whatever you need to do with that one arm, and then you can subtly pick it up again. And so most of the time, though, I'm just kind of like gesturing. These arms are all weird and twisted. I'm just kind of gesturing with both arms, and that's one of the reasons why you keep hands with one, like the index finger is slightly pointed, you'll see, because you can gesture like you're pointing, and yeah. Missed the start. I got to work around my phone. You're watching this on the bus. You're on the bus? You're on the bus in Scotland. Wow, that's impressive. So unfortunately, I don't have any great advice. This is just how I do it. And I'm usually moving both arms around at the same time. And if I have to do something with one arm, I drop one arm, do the thing I have to do, and then pick it up again. And that's really it. That's all I got for that. Like I said, there is a technique where you cross the rods and you do a thing, and then you can really get both arms going independently, but I've never been able to master it. I'm not good at it. Do a search on YouTube, and you should be able to find it. I love Kermit. Kermit's my favorite of all. I hope that gives you a little bit of help. I know it's not terribly informative. It's just that's something I'm not good at either. So the point is, don't feel bad that you're not getting it right away, because it is very, very difficult to master. So I think that might do it. I think we're good. Woo, that was a whirlwind, a whole bunch of stuff. Also, it's getting really cold in here. I got to close up the window and possibly go have lunch, I think. That's what's going to happen now. So this was real good. I think we're going to keep going with these. I still got a whole bunch of questions to get to. Thank you. Thank you very much. That's very kind of you to say. That was far from my best Kermit performance ever. Oh, that's what we're doing. That's what we're here for. You know, this is the thing. I mean, when I was a kid, there was no internet. I had to self-teach everything like this. So, you know, this is me just kind of going, I know what it's like when you're starting out. I know how personal this whole thing can be, and it's like I just want to help. You know, that's it. So yeah, I think we will definitely be doing more of this. I had a good time. And yeah, okay, I'm gonna go. I think that should be it for, again, we got way more questions. There's way more demos coming. Yeah, all right, I'm gonna go. So I hope everybody had a good time. I think the music stopped a while ago. I gotta look into that. I think I didn't have it on endless loop. 2020 years, the year I get an Operation Puppet. All right. You said it. You said it. I'm gonna hold you to that. Yeah, I'm gonna have lunch. So I hope everybody has a great day. If you've got any questions when I'm not here, by all means, just send them in on whatever social media platform you're on. I'll add it to the queue. And next one will at least be next month, but we may have one before that, just because this was so good that I think maybe we'll do this more often. But anyway, I'm gonna have lunch. Have a good day, everyone.